We're traveling nearly 5,000 years into the past, to the land between two rivers, the birthplace of one of the first civilizations on Earth, Sumer. This region, known as Mesopotamia, modern-day Iraq, was home to the Sumerians around 4000 BC. And honestly, they didn't just build a society, they built the blueprint for civilization itself. Sumer wasn't one unified empire. It was a collection of powerful city-states like Ur, Uruk, and Lagash. Each had its own ruler, its own patron god, and its own identity. Imagine ancient cities competing, trading, and sometimes fighting, kind of like early versions of modern nations. At the heart of each city stood massive temples called ziggurats. These weren't just buildings, they were spiritual centers connecting humans to the gods. The Sumerians believed their gods controlled everything, weather, crops, even their fate. But here's where things get really groundbreaking. The Sumerians invented one of the earliest writing systems, Cuneiform. Using a stylus on clay tablets, they recorded laws, trade, stories, and daily life. This was the beginning of written history. They were also skilled traders and innovators. They developed the wheel, advanced irrigation systems, and even early forms of mathematics. Base 60 math. Yep, that's why we have 60 minutes in an hour today. And let's not forget their stories. The Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the oldest known pieces of literature, came from Sumer. It's a tale of friendship, adventure, and the search for immortality. Sound familiar? It set the tone for storytelling as we know it. But like many early civilizations, Sumer eventually declined due to invasions, environmental changes, and shifting power. Yet its legacy didn't disappear. It influenced later empires like the Akkadians and Babylonians, and ultimately, us. Sumer is the place many historians call the cradle of civilization. That's right, not Rome, not Egypt, not Greece. Sumer came before all of them, and without it, the world we live in today might look completely different. So in the next minutes, we're going to explore who the Sumerians were, how they lived, what they invented, and why their legacy is still shaping your life right now. Let's dive in deeper. Sumer existed in a region called Mesopotamia, which literally means land between rivers. Those rivers were the Tigris and the Euphrates, located in what is now modern-day Iraq. At first glance, this might not seem like the ideal place to build a civilization. The climate was harsh, floods were unpredictable, and natural resources were limited. But here's the twist. Those rivers made the land incredibly fertile. And around 4000 BC, people began to settle here, not just as farmers, but as builders of something entirely new cities. Sumer wasn't one single country. Instead, it was made up of independent city-states, places like Uruk, Ur, Eridu, and Lagash. Each city had its own ruler, its own government, and even its own patron god. Think of them as early versions of modern cities or nations, sometimes trading with each other, sometimes going to war. And at the center of each city stood something massive. This is a ziggurat, a towering step pyramid made of mud bricks. But this wasn't just architecture, it was religious, political, and cultural all in one. The Sumerians believed their gods lived above them, and the ziggurat acted as a bridge between the human world and the divine. Only priests were allowed at the top, where rituals and offerings were made to keep the gods happy. Because in Sumerian life, everything depended on the gods. The Sumerians were polytheistic. They believed in many gods. Gods of the sky, the earth, water, storms, and even specific cities. If crops failed, the gods were angry. If floods came, the gods were sending a message. Their entire worldview revolved around maintaining balance with these powerful forces. Now here's where things get really groundbreaking. The Sumerians didn't just build cities, they created one of the first known writing systems in human history. It's called cuneiform. Using a reed stylus, they pressed wedge-shaped symbols into soft clay tablets. At first, this writing was used for something simple: record-keeping, trade, taxes, inventory. But over time, it evolved into something much bigger. They began recording laws, stories, myths, and history. And just like that, humanity moved from prehistory into history. Think about that for a second. Before writing, everything had to be remembered or passed down by word of mouth. But now, ideas could last forever. And one of those ideas became one of the most famous stories ever told, the Epic of Gilgamesh. This is one of the oldest surviving works of literature in the world. It tells the story of a king named Gilgamesh and his journey in search of immortality. Along the way, there are themes of friendship, loss, fear of death, things we still relate to today. It even includes a great flood story, which sounds very similar to later myths found in other cultures. But Sumer wasn't just about gods and stories. It was also about everyday life, you know? Most people were farmers. They grew crops like barley and wheat, using advanced irrigation systems to control the flow of water from the rivers. This was a huge innovation. Instead of relying on unpredictable rainfall, they engineered canals and dikes to water their fields, and this allowed them to produce surplus food. And honestly, surplus food changes everything. Because once you have extra food, not everyone has to farm. Some people become craftsmen, others become merchants, priests, or officials. And just like that, you get specialization, and the foundations of a complex society. The Sumerians traded goods like textiles, pottery, and grain with neighboring regions. They didn't have many natural resources, so trade was essential. But here's something you might not expect. The Sumerians were also the world's first known brewers of beer. In ancient Sumer, beer wasn't just a drink. It was a daily essential, enjoyed by everyone from farmers to priests. Water could be unsafe, but beer, made from fermented barley, was both nourishing and much safer to drink. Beer was so important that it appeared in religious rituals, offered to the gods and celebrated in hymns. And here's a fun fact. The oldest known beer recipe was actually written in cuneiform on a clay tablet from Sumer itself. So every time you see a glass of beer, you're looking at a tradition that began in the cradle of civilization. And speaking of innovation, the Sumerians are credited with inventing the wheel. Yeah, the wheel. At first it was used for pottery, but eventually it transformed transportation and trade. They also developed early forms of mathematics, based on the number 60. That's why today we have 60 seconds in a minute and 60 minutes in an hour. You can thank the Sumerians for that every time you check the clock. The Sumerians, really laid the groundwork for legal systems. While the famous Code of Hammurabi came later, the Sumerians had their own early laws and systems of justice. There were rules about property, trade, and behavior, because, well, once you have cities, you definitely need order. But life in Sumer wasn't easy, not by a long shot. Floods could just wipe out entire harvests. Wars between city-states, those were pretty common. And yeah, disease could spread quickly in those crowded cities. Power struggles were a constant reality. Eventually, around 2300 BC, a ruler named Sargon of Akkad conquered the Sumerian city-states and created one of the world's first empires, the Akkadian Empire. Ki-Engir, its Sumerian name, as a political entity had declined by 2020 BC, but its culture didn't disappear though. The Akkadians, Babylonians, and Assyrians all inherited and built upon Sumerian ideas: writing, law, architecture, religion. Sumer became the foundation for everything that followed in Mesopotamia and beyond. Today, all that remains are ruins, artifacts, and clay tablets buried beneath the earth. But their impact is honestly everywhere. It all traces back, at least in part, to these early innovators who lived between two rivers thousands of years ago. So next time you pick up a pen or check your phone for the time, just remember, you're using ideas that began in Sumer.